Hello YouTube, my name is Ace and I'm here to talk about history. Although every history of mankind is interesting, I find ancient Chinese history extraordinarily fascinating, with many interesting behind stories and events. Sadly, I couldn't find any YouTube videos that talk about this time. For this reason, I would like to start a channel dedicated to talk about Chinese history. Before I start, I would like to mention that my pronunciation of Chinese characters may be incorrect because I'm not a native Chinese. I'm actually a Korean who happens to be interested in Chinese history. Also, I should mention that there are ongoing debates on whether some of the stories that I'll talk about may be exaggerated or completely mythical, especially those that had happened prior to the Warring States period. The first story I'm going to talk about is the fall of the Shang dynasty, the first recognized dynasty of China. In China, before the Shang dynasty, there was another dynasty named Xia dynasty. Although there are some disagreements on the existence of Xia dynasty, there is some archaeological evidence to support its existence. It's estimated that it was founded around 2070 BC, but no one knows for sure. Thanks to Emperor Yao and Emperor Shun, who were among the first emperors of Xia dynasty, Xia enjoyed a time of great peace and prosperity. It is said that no other time in Chinese history was as peaceful as the time of Yao and Shun. But eventually, the Xia dynasty came to an end with the tyranny of the last emperor Ji. That was 1600 BC. Afterwards, the Xia dynasty was succeeded by the Shang dynasty. Until recently, the Shang was regarded as a mythical country that had not existed in real history, because there had not been any solid evidence to prove its existence. But after an accidental discovery, Shang was recognized as a historical dynasty. In 1899, there lived a man who sold medicine that miraculously cured malaria. His neighbors were curious where he got the ingredients for the medicine, so they followed him. And they caught him digging up some turtle shells at night. But those turtle shells had some strange engravings that looked like hieroglyphs. Finally, the words got to some scholars who decided to investigate the site. And surprisingly, those turtle shells with engravings turned out to be relics of the ancient Shang dynasty. And that's how the Shang dynasty was formally recognized as a historical dynasty. And like the Xia dynasty before, the Shang dynasty began to decline after some 500 years. In 1075 BC, the King Ju, who would be the last king of the Shang dynasty, ascended to the throne. The King Ju was not an incapable man. In fact, he had abilities which surpassed those of ordinary men. He was intelligent, handsome, and quick-witted. He was also a man of great strength. It is said that in his early years he won many battles with his military talent. Sadly, he was also ruthless and arrogant by nature. Because of this, he mistreated his officials and came to believe that everyone was inferior to him. So if King Zhu found anyone who disagreed with him or was not to his liking, he executed that man in a very cruel way. He also collected immense taxes to build a storage house for all of his treasures. Furthermore, he had people build a private zoo full of exotic animals that were brought from all corners of his empire just to please the king himself. But one day, a young man entered the zoo without permission. He was caught and sentenced to death. But when he was interrogated, he said that he wanted to hunt a bear so that he could feed his dying mother. In China, bear feet are believed to be cure for many illnesses. Upon hearing the man's story, the zookeepers were very moved by how much he loved his mother, that they decided to tell the story to the king. Soon after that, the intruder was summoned in front of the king, and then the king beat him to death with his bare hand. No matter what the young man's motive was, the king felt that the young man had to die for trespassing on his zoo, and the king's reputation grew worse and worse among his subjects. While King Zhu's tyranny continued, there was peace in the nation of Zhu, which was located west of Shang's capital. This can be a little confusing because this nation had the same name as the king. So let me make it clear. King Zhu was the emperor of Shang, while the nation or the state of Zhu was only a state nation of Shang, which makes the state of Zhu a subject country of King Zhu. Anyway, the Duke of Zhu was a man named Wen. Unlike King Zhu, Wen was a man of virtue and was very popular among the people and other government officials. Wen had 3 sons, and their names were Boikao, Fa, and Dan. Among them, Dan seemed to have a brilliant mind. Knowing that King Zhu was into drinking and women, Dan made a plan. First, he got married to one of Yuso's daughters, who was known for her beauty. When their daughter was born, Dan named her Daji. Daji grew up to be a stunningly beautiful woman, and Dan trained her in many techniques of seduction, such as walking, dancing, and how to talk to men. On top of that, Daji was taught on everything that King Zhu liked and disliked. And then she was sent to Yuso, who was her grandfather on mother's side. Dan continued to plot. First, Dan told Yuso that he would pay the taxes for Yuso. But this turned out to be a lie, and Yuso was late for his tax payment. As I mentioned before, King Zhu was an intelligent king, and it was unlikely that he would forget about Yuso's late tax payment. It was obvious that the king would soon descend upon Yuso's land with his army. Dan wrote to troubled Yuso and suggested that he should offer his daughter Daji to the king to appease him. And that's how King Zhu met Daji, and they formed a formidable duo. Daji was a very beautiful woman, and she had been taught to please and seduce the king all throughout her life. Eventually, King Zhu became infatuated with her. Like the king, Daji also shared a taste for cruelty and together with the king committed many atrocities. They especially enjoyed torturing and executing prisoners. In order to please Daji, the king created the cannon burning punishment. One large hollow bronze cylinder was stuffed with burning charcoal and allowed to burn until red hot. Then, prisoners were told that they could be pardoned if they could successfully cross the bronze cylinder. All the prisoners who tried failed and were burned to death. Zhu and Daji were known to get highly aroused after watching such torture. In many cases, people were tortured without any apparent reason. People were cut open just because Daji wanted to see what was inside human body. Another thing they did was to dig up a pond and fill it with wine. And then they hung meat around trees. After that, the king let loose some naked people to please Daji. After so many evil deeds and killing, people and many vessels started to turn their backs on King Zhu, and Daji was the main cause of all this. But this was as Dan had planned it.